So learn how to edit at the beginning. Okay, it's recording. Perfect. All right. So welcome to our third episode of If You're Not First, You're Last. And I am Jeffrey Smith, and my amazing co-host is
Virginia Barcelo.
wonderful. And this episode is going to be about Stanley Kubrick. And just before we get started, I just want to show uh, one of my prized possessions. If I had a fire in this house, I would save this before any humans. It is the book that this entire podcast is based on, along with, if you have the box set of Stanley Kubrick, there's an amazing documentary that's in there. I would highly recommend it to anyone. And again, if you haven't watched the first two episodes, what are you doing? Why would you start the third episode? Go to one, go to two, then watch all of the Stanley Kubrick movies. There's only like 8 of them, and then come on board. Okay, so yes, our topic is, again, as I said last time, I was horribly worried, and I did come off as a sycophant. When I watched, I go, I am a Bowie nut in that episode. This is gonna be 10 times worse, because if there is a director that I idolize, it is Stanley Kubrick. He is forever and always my favorite director. So it's very important that we did this episode. At the same time, he does fit into this category because, his first and last movies, there are similarities, there are differences. There is his power as a director, it's different, and things we'll talk about with his background that really set him up to be the master director he is. So the first question I'm going to ask my amazing co-host is, what is your gateway Kubrick movie? What's the first Kubrick movie that you remember watching?
Well, I think, and this is probably a gateway for many people who came of age in the 90s, it would have been A Clockwork Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Everyone had to go and rent and watch it because it was so edgy and different.
It's also one of those iconic college posters.
So many times. Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's, if you walk into a male's dorm room, it's going to be that, and then like some beer girl is going to be that movie. That's a great one. One we'll definitely be talking about in this podcast. And for me, the first one is oddly enough HBO 1989, watching Full Metal Jacket. That was my first one, and then I just went on a whirling dervish of finding all his films. I was shocked, and I was in awe. Seeing Clockwork Orange, it's not an outlier, but I don't know if you love that movie, if you love Stanley Kubrick, or if you just, because, I think of that movie, I think of like Straw Dogs, and I think of a lot of like early 70s kind of torture porn, like those movies.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I do think sometimes if your gateway to a director is a specific film, I don't know how much you love the rest of his films.
Well, I'll say I don't really care to rewatch it again. First, I think I watched it a few times. I read the novel it's based on.
Right.
I learned about it. I don't know if it was just watching it way too much, which has even happened to films I really, really enjoyed, where I'm like, okay, I have to take a 10 or 20-year break from this just so it's new.
Right.
But it's a little dark for me now. And I mean, it's always dark, but before it was like, this edgy teen nihilism thing. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
now I'm like, yeah, I don't really know if I need that.
Yeah. There's a Holden Caulfield effect with that movie where at a certain age you go like, he shouldn't have attacked those old people like that. That's not nice. But again, it's a great movie. It's definitely in my top 5. I will not say where it is right now. We're going to get to that shortly. But to me, like the order in which you watch it, I think for a lot of people, I think either Clockwork or The Shining, the 70s movies are kind of the ones.
Shining was my second.
Yeah, I think Shining was my third. And then, although I probably saw Spartacus first, but sometimes we forget that that's a Kubrick movie. We often think of that as a Kirk Douglas, Laurence Olivier film. And if you're not familiar with when we get to his history, it's one of the most amazing moments where he went from, because again, it's his second Hollywood film, if you don't count The Killing. It's an amazing story about that film, which I might as well get into it now. He was the second director hired, and again, this was a Kirk Douglas film, and all names and means. He produced it. He was in charge of it. It was everything he wanted to do. There's a great story about this film where Kirk said, why is it where he got Ustinov, he got Olivier, and he got Charles Law to come over to his house for a reading of the script. And this is when and this is like 1961, and Ustinov comes over in a nice, like, Brooks Brothers suit, and Olivier's dressed to the nines. It's perfect. And as a joke, Charles Laughton comes dressed as a Roman senator. He's got a bed sheet on, like, large Charles Laughton is there, and they're all waiting for Douglas outside by his lily pool. And it's one of those pools. This is, it's 60s design that's got a rock waterfall coming off it, and it's all rock around it. And they're just waiting for him. And again, they're just sitting there. And there are all these, three British legends, and Kirk Douglas comes out in full Spartacus uniform, like he has his full tunic and everything, and he's like jumping on the rocks. He's, and I'll jump off and I'll hit the sword like this, and they're like they can't. What have we gotten ourselves into? This guy is nuts. So it's not working out for a couple weeks, and one of the producers reminds him that Kirk had a really good time on on Path of Glory. And that really Kubrick was great for that movie, and they had a good friendship. So he hires Kubrick. Kubrick goes about, and he really makes a movie about Olivier and Lawton. And Spartacus is just this, like, he takes out 90% of Douglas's dialogue, because he's like, why would this slave Roman have this vocabulary? Like, why is he talking on? He makes him into this, like, grunting brute, And he never forgave Kubrick for the rest of his life. Never forgave Kubrick. But so he brought his own downfall, which is great. But again, this is the imprint of what Kubrick did. Kubrick never went on to do another film that wasn't a Stanley Kubrick film. But that control and power he has is so important to him. Again, Stanley Kubrick, born July 26, 1928, dies March 7th, 1999, full 9 months before his last film came out. And almost luckily for him, because of who Tom Cruise was, he was a pit bull, that they're not touching the film. Like, there are definitely people that were involved. They're like, this is a Tom Cruise film. Kubrick's dead now. We can kind of make it into more of a Tom Cruise film. And Tom Cruise said, "You're not touching Stanley. It's just like Kubrick." Like, so
Yeah.
Unfortunately for him, but fortunately for Kubrick, this happened in a certain way. So before we get into kind of the run of his films and kind of like what we're going to talk about in this episode, there's two major things we're going to kind of key in on. But give me your top 5 favorite Kubrick films.
Oh gosh, I haven't even really watched all of them, but let's see. I'm second to think. Okay, so from what I've seen, I would say Lolita, The Killing.
Oh.
I know Clockwork Orange should be in there because it's actually really wonderfully shot, and you can see echoes
movie.
of it in other movies. So we'll just put that as 3, because even though I'm burned out, that's not on the film. That's on me overdoing things.
So I'll just give you the names: Path of Glory, Spartacus,
2001 and Shining. And
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really watched enough of Spartacus, and I haven't watched Full Metal Jacket to really give a fair assessment.
Full Metal Jacket is maybe the ultimate first half, second half movie, where the first half is absolutely one of the greatest movies ever made. It's a training sequence. And it's one of the amazing things is the guy that he hired to be the military expert to make this work becomes the drill sergeant. He's an actor in the film. Originally, they fire the actor that's going to be the drill sergeant, and he brings in this guy. And the producers aren't sure about this guy's never acted before. He says, "Let me show you something." And Kubrick had him do all the lines to the movie while having a tennis ball machine hit him in the chest with tennis balls. And he doesn't move. He doesn't move. He just does all the line. He makes up stuff like only 2 things come from Texas Steers and Queers is a line that he invented. He's just this, and then he goes on to have this kind of amazing career as an actor. But yeah, to me, Full Metal Jacket is probably number 5 for me. Eyes Wide Shut is 4. Doctor Strangelove's 3. The Shining's 2, and then probably Clockwork Orange is 1. Although probably hovering around 6 is Space Odyssey. One of the really cool things in Clockwork Orange is there's a scene where they're in a record store, and literally one of the records is 2001: A Space Odyssey, the soundtrack, and he's kind of referencing himself in this kind of cool way. It's kind of one of the things I know about him is that he's so iconic, and it's one of the things we'll talk about when we get to Eyes Wide Shut, that his films were Stanley Kubrick productions. Like that, he was the draw. There's no one who has even half a career in Full Metal Jacket. Matthew Modine is maybe the closest He's maybe the only, one that kind of, carries that to the hilt. So what's really interesting about him is that, he became the icon. So the two major influences on his early life were camera. He was a photographer for Life magazine. He photographed for many magazines. He shot many covers in the 50s. And the fact that he was a chess prodigy as a child. And those are kind of the two things. I kind of hate the fact that it's so simplistic that, the most complicated of director of all time can really be put down to his two childhood loves, photography and chess. But it's the fact that it can be like there's this moment, and it's almost obstructive inside the actor's studio with the great James Lipton. He's interviewing the great Steven Spielberg, and they're talking about Closing Encounters of the Third Kind, which is completely, there's a lot of thought behind it that's very
that movie so much.
And Lipton in a very specific way goes, Stephen, what did your father do? He goes, he was a mathematician. And he goes, what did your mother do? She said, she gave piano lessons. And he goes, how do the human beings talk to the aliens it's so set up, it's awful. And Spielberg has this moment, he goes, oh, well, they talked in math, and he pauses, and for the first time in his life, it's 20 years after the movie made, he goes, use it. And that's the first time, and he realized it's such an overdrawn moment, but basically James Lipton makes Spielberg realize it's a movie about his parents' divorce that he made 20 years ago. Like he makes him like in this awful. Again, now it's very funny because this year, The Fableman comes out where Spielberg is supposedly for the first time talking about his parents' marriage, but no, he actually did in Closing Encounters of the Third Kind. But it's horrible to simplify such a complicated. It's true. Like his movies are about photography.
I'm gonna put something out there though. Yes. Is photography and chess are two things that seem simple. But if you've ever taken a photography class or gone to chess club, you will know it is actually very complicated. Especially if you're doing, you have to make sure your things don't just turn out shades of gray. You have to be aware of the light. So that actually makes sense because his movies, even when he has like opulent sets, still have somewhat skill. They're like, here is the main color. And here's the main theme. It's like, oh, anyone can point a camera, but anyone can point a camera, but you can't. Not everyone's going to make it look good. Like, there's a reason I'm not a professional photographer.
I mean, there are of course horror stories about his controlling nature on set, his ability to control a set, that his movies are a chess game. I mean, the treatment of Olive Oil, that's not her name, I know that, but her treatment on The Shining, yes.
Although I love her as Olive Oil.
Yes, it is famous how mistreated she felt on the set of The Shining, and there's video of it. Like he doesn't, and also Scatman Carruthers. I mean, but everybody. I mean, everyone on a Kubrick set is at his whims. I mean, with Eyes Wide Shut, Sidney Pollack is not the first actor in that role. It was in fact Harvey Keitel for over 14 months. He was held on set because of how long that movie takes to shoot and how things last. And Sidney Pollack is doing his first scene. He's like, this has got to be nonsense. You get Sidney Pollack, the director. And he does his first scene. We're done. And Kubrick's like, let's do it a little bit different with different lighting. And, and it took 8 more months with Pollack on set. And he's a control freak at a level. And I think for a lot of directors, that's the lesson they take from Kubrick is the control freak nature and this need to kind of intertwine himself into the actors. I mean, one of the most harrowing stories is, I mean, The Shining for all intents and purposes was a cursed set. I mean, Jack Nicholson found out his mother was actually his grandmother and his mother was actually his sister 3 months before this movie started shooting. At the same time, he's dealing with the fact that his very good friend, the director of Chinatown, sexually assaulted a woman at his house. So this is not a child, yes. This is not the best time of Jack Nicholson's career, and Kubrick uses it. I mean, he uses all these things. I mean, Andy McDowell honestly thought he created this lifelong friendship with Kubrick. He was like, them making The Clockwork Orange, he thought I'm gonna make like 10 movies with this guy. Like they're so close and they're just so great. And he calls him over to the house. He says, we need to do AR work because again, there's a lot of voiceover in that movie. Yeah. And he said, no problem. So he lives at Kubrick's house for 2 weeks. It's just the two of them. The family's gone, and it's the two of them. They're playing ping pong and they're talking, they're drinking, and they're doing the voiceover. He's like, this is the greatest director of the 20th century. He's my best friend now. This is, my career is set. And then they don't talk for a little while, and then his agent calls and he says, Stanley hasn't paid you for voiceover. You want me to take care of it? He says, I'll call him. We'll get it settled. So he calls up Kubrick, and he says, I only got paid for like a tenth of the time I did voiceover. He says, yes, that was a tenth when you did voiceover. The rest was ping pong. I'm not paying you for that. So this is, I mean, this, and that was the end of their it wasn't the end of their friendship, but there was no friendship. So again, we finished up the ending of the Roger McDowell story, and now we're going to get into the fact that we're starting with The Killing, because you frantically called me and said there are two movies before this: Fear, Desire, and The Killer's Kiss, which are not, while Stanley Kubrick movies are not Stanley Kubrick movies. They're interesting to watch. There are definitely things about them that I think show what would become of him, but they're not Stanley Kubrick pictures yet. So I think that's why we're starting with The Killing, which again is his first classic, 1956, a heist movie starring the great Sterling Hayden, one of the most difficult people in the history of Hollywood. If you don't know any Sterling Hayden stories, he is the cop in The Godfather. Just a very famous asshole. Let's just put it that way. But fantastic in this movie. And what's great about this movie is it's the setup for thousands of heist movies. I mean, if Quentin Tarantino has thankfully admitted to the fact that this movie is a major influence on Reservoir Dogs, but it is a sharpshooter, a criminal, a woman who works at the track, a wrestler, and I can't remember who the last person is, but it's just very hodgepodge of people that go about a $2 million heist at a racetrack. One of the great things about this movie that I laugh about is the only thing my sister knows about this movie is they kill a horse, and she finds that deplorable. And it's one of my favorite things. Again, like I said, his movies are about photography and control. And Sterling Hayden is someone who has to control every aspect of this heist. And it's just a beautifully shot movie. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. Virginia, what were your visual thoughts when you saw?
Oh my gosh. Okay, first I said it's a heist. Heist movies are one of my favorite categories, and I'm not going to pretend some expert who's seen every heist movie, but I absolutely adore this. It hit all the spots for me for it, and let's see. Okay, I really enjoyed the cast of characters they came up with. And it was interesting that there was three that were married or in a relationship. So the main guy, Johnny, then the sad sack cashier, and his wife is like one of the villains in it. I mean, she's just from her first sentence, you're just like, this one. You're meant to almost loathe her. She's just so dismissive of this sad little guy. And then the couple, this one man who's also involved in his wife is ill. We're not told what her illness is, but she's basically bedridden. And he's in it just to give her, for the hope of to give her a better life. And the sad cashier is in it to try to impress his wife, who really does not care at all. And the other guy just got, the one who comes out of the plan just gets out of jail, and they're looking to just try to get away for this basically childlike woman who has waited faithfully and is doting on him. I love the wrestler because he's actually played by a real life wrestler and chess player who I really don't know how to pronounce his name, but he went by Nick the Wrestler. And so as soon as I was like, this guy looks familiar. And then there's a bar scene where he takes his shirt off. I'm like, yes, I knew that. This is Nick the Wrestler.
No, it was really
so wonderfully shot. It's not like when you start it, it looks like a basic heist movie. You could see which are the naturalized outdoor shots in the stage ones, but there are still touches that you're like, oh, I see Kubrick, especially the one scene we've talked about at the airport. The airport really showcases like his framing and everything on it.
Unbelievable.
The narration I love with the time jumps, like something has like, oh, well, this was there's a crooked cop in it too.
Yes.
It's a wonderful film. It really, when you watch it, you see the benchmarks for so many other, because this was 1956 that came after in that genre.
Yeah, I don't think there would be the original Ocean's 11 without this film. There's a lot of heist movies that are, it's a great, this weird hodgepodge of people. Again, is just rob the horse race. But no, it's this intricate plot that involves two different almost flim flams, like two different like crooked things, like the horse dying, and then the wrestlers start to fight. Just all these little smart things that again that show the control that Kubrick had and kind of his understanding of control. And he just has Sterling Hayden, who's just for that time period. He's a giant. He's a huge human being. He's also so when he smacks Al Pacino in The Godfather, it looks like a grown man smacking a kid. And that's what he won for Sterling Hayden was a giant man back then. Again, his famous shot of him in the clown mask, and Christopher Nolan went so far as to find the same clown mask when he did The Dark Knight, because this is a groundbreaking movie, and just the visuals of it. Again, like you cannot get over that ending. Just the way how he got the money to float away, and just this ballet of money flying around is so gorgeous. And again, the first time he turns with the clown mask on, it's a photo. I mean, there's so many things that are just beautiful photos that would just be his groundbreaking thing. And when you talk about 2001: The Space Odyssey, like if you watch that Star Wars documentary about the technical guys, they said we all were so in awe of 2001. We just wanted to make 2001 fast and exciting. Because that's a movie. Again, every shot of that movie is absolutely gorgeous, and every one of his movies, from Spartacus to Lolita. I mean, Lolita is a movie about looking at someone.
Yeah.
As much as I think the best movie that ever made the idea of filmmaking into stalker idea will always be Hitchcock. He makes Hitchcock's the first one to ever make you aware that you're staring at someone in a film.
Yeah.
And in Lolita, it's so depraved. He makes every one of us a pervert in that movie.
Oh,
just these long shots.
I know. Nabokov actually did not. He was like, I just don't feel anyone's really capturing my message in the book. Like he's like,
Right.
You're not the guy's unreliable narrator.
Right.
We're like almost going along, but it's just, I mean, when I'm watching it, I'm not like, yeah, that's great. Lolitas are actually a thing, and there's all these little temptations, and this movie shows it, but it's just wonderfully done. Even you have to.
It just makes you,
even if you don't agree with his,
makes you so conscious of it. He makes you so conscious of the fact that you're leering in that movie. It's so great. And then it wasn't until the next movie where he really became known for being kind of this chess master filmmaker controlling actors, like very famously in Doctor Strangelove, there were actors that were told, okay, that was your take for you, now just do a complete silly take for me, and I won't use it, but I just want you to have that element. And then he went and used it in the movie.
See, I've always wanted to see that one, and I haven't, and it's really sad because I love the actors in it. Do you think I would have seen it by now?
It's one of the funniest movies ever to me. There's almost no scene in the history of film funnier than the president of the United States talking to the prime minister of Russia, whatever they call him, and he just woke him up, and he's clearly drunk on vodka, and the president really puts the phone to him and said, "I think he's drunk," and he goes, "No, the bomb, Dmitri. The nuclear." It's the funniest scene to me because it's this long, just Peter Sellers just absolutely crushing it. Just absolutely crushing in that scene. Just everyone in that movie is so funny. I love that movie. And then you work on The Clockwork and Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon's probably, if of all his films, is probably the least watched, I would say. But it is a master. It is one of those beautiful movies in the history of films, because after making Clockwork, he was on top of the world. He was the biggest director in the world. And the studio said to him, "What do you want? Whatever you want, we'll give it to you." He says, "There's these cameras you guys own. You don't use them anymore. They're for shooting backdrop photos, like when people are in cars and there's a background. They shoot, it looks like it's going on. You don't really use them anymore. Can I have them? I just love old cameras." And the guy gave them to him. So then the head of photography called up the head of the studio. He said, "What did you do?" He goes, "What?" He said, "I just gave some cameras." He's like, they're the most magnificent cameras ever made. These things they're pieces of art. Like we can't make them again. You got to get them back." So he calls Kubrick up and he says, "I need them back." He said, "Sorry, I cut the fronts of them off and put these giant lenses on them to shoot these giant widescreen scenes for Barry Lyndon. He knew exactly what he was doing. Like this thing was kind of like he knew exactly what he wanted it for. He put these giant lenses on them and shot those gigantic, wide-ranging scenes for Barry Lyndon were shot in. One of the great things about Barry Lyndon, the first moment that I saw the Queen movie, The Favorite, which is one of my favorite movies of the last couple of years, that's all Barry Lyndon. I mean, all those candlelit shots, that whole movie is shot in candlelight, and that director clearly shows you that he is in awe. Like I can go into 1,000 directors that absolutely loved Kubrick. I mean, just Spielberg's heart was broken on the set of for Indiana Jones when Kubrick said, "You're not treating these snakes right. This is ridiculous," and just left the set. It broke Spielberg for his life. It's the reason why Spielberg went out of his way to shoot AI. Yeah, it was just this thing like I have to please the greatest director ever. Again, Kubrick is the man. Again, I can't go over just how perfect he was. The Shining is a master. Does Stephen King like The Shining? I don't give a fuck. It's a masterpiece. I really don't care. Like, I don't care what Stephen King thinks of The Shining. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the most beautiful movies ever shot. There's an entire documentary made about all the insane theories about what The Shining's really about. Again, is it about the murders of Indians? Is it about the space landing? Is it about the Holocaust? All these insane theories. I've watched an entire documentary about these people explaining their theories from just watching The Shining. It is the most deep intellectual movie of all time. At the same time, it also has creepy twins in it. And did it invent furries? I mean, there's this whole philosophical thing. Like, did somehow Kubrick invent furries from this movie? It's just The Shining's a masterpiece. And of course, Full Metal Jacket, and then finally Eyes Wide Shut, which is the second of our, if you're not first, your last movies. Eyes Wide Shut. His last film, he finished shooting it with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise right before his death, and then Tom Cruise protected the movie until it came out in 1999, where I saw it at the theaters in Gainesville in college. And of the 12 people that went and saw it with me, I am the only one that loved it. I will tell you that right now. I will defend that. I will defend Eyes Wide Shut as being a masterpiece to the day I die. Now, interestingly enough, in a review of British filmmakers and British people in film and everything, and reviewers and everything, it was named the #1 movie of the 1990s, which is amazing when you consider the 1990s. So let's get into this. We talked about the killings. Unbelievable movie, great shot work. The final scene is a masterpiece, and it kind of set up what he would do over the rest of his career. The one movie we didn't talk about, before we get to Eyes Wide Shut, there's one story I want to tell, which is after the killings, he did Path to Glory with Kirk Douglas. It's probably Kirk Douglas's best performance. About 3 years later, they're making Spartacus, and the first director is not working. It's just not working out. So someone reminds Kirk, you had a really good time with Kubrick. You should think about it. So before the movie got started shooting, he invited Charles Laughton, Ustinov, and Laurence Olivier over to his house to do line readings. And they, Ustinov and Olivier come over in nice Brooks Brothers suits, and Laughton, to be funny, comes over in a bed sheet, so he looks like a Roman counselor, which is who he's playing. And they're waiting for him outside of the pool area. They're just having drinks, just waiting for him. He's like 30, 40 minutes late. Like, what's going on? And it's like one of those rocky pools that has like a rock waterfall and like rocks everywhere. And they're just sitting at a little table waiting for him. And Kirk Douglas comes out in full Spartacus, like what he wore in the movie. Like, he comes out in that, he's jumping around the rocks with his little sword. He's like fighting imaginary people. And these three British legends are like, what are we doing? What's going on here? Why are we doing this movie? And they hire the great Stanley Kubrick a couple weeks later, and he cuts 90% of his lines. Kirk Douglas' lines are cut from the movie. He says, why would a slave soldier know how to speak? This doesn't make sense. The movie becomes Charles Laughton versus Olivier, with kind of Spartacus being this tool of Laughton's for the film. And he never forgave Kubrick for as long as he lived. He never forgave Kubrick. But this is a movie that made Kubrick, this gave him the power to do Strangelove, to do Odyssey, and then from there it was just every movie was a Kubrick production. So I thought this is not your first time watching it. You said you watched it before. What were your thoughts watching it at this time?
I enjoyed it a lot more. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is like, so my brother Walter.
Yes.
He's also studied film. He's been on a few podcasts himself as a guest talking about film, and he has a film blog. So he definitely, has a lot of knowledge and opinions on film, and he pointed out that Kubrick makes films for adults.
Right.
So when you're watching this movie about this couple that's married, they've been together, they were together before they got married, almost a decade, and they have this child, and there's all this career stuff. One gave up their career, the other one's, still got his going on, and hitting some snafus in this. Basically, let's see. They said married for 9, had child at 7. So with the kids, it's almost they're hitting the 7-year itch thing a little early or a little late. But you're gonna notice that you're gonna actually identify that more when you've been in a long-term relationship as an adult than when you're, even in your early 20s, even if it's with your high school sweetheart or something, just because of, well, first your brain developing more, and just going through these things of building a career, having a career, and giving it up, and changing lives, and being with this one person, and all these other things, and maybe learning you don't have to share every thought. You can, although it's good for the movie, maybe something should be kept to yourself, especially if you've been inebriated and you're just in a mood.
She is so good in that scene. Again, this to me is her coming out party. It is the beginning of this run that she has, where she gets Oscar nominations and wins Oscars, wins Emmys. Before this, she was Tom Cruise's wife, and after this movie, she is Nicole Kidman. Even though To Die For was 2 years before this, and she was fantastic in that as well. This movie is her coming out party, and so that scene where she's high and drunk, and she literally, it sets him off on this journey like that. It is phenomenal. It is just some of the best acting you'll ever see. She is so good.
I think a lot of us as adults have been in at least one situation where we had a little too much and we're mad about something and we can't figure it out.
Yeah.
But we know it's like in her case, he's just taking things for granted. Like, of course he did. And she's like, you know what? I have a brain, and I have, and it's like, you're not picking up what she's obviously trying to start some kind of little fantasy thing. You're like, no way. What? Women aren't built to fantasize. And she's like, that's it. I'm done with you.
Well, she says
if you bringing it up and bringing it up.
He says if you it's the scene from the trailer where she goes, if you only knew. Yeah. And it starts her off in this thing. One of the great things about that whole scenario is the gentleman that she has like the sexual fantasy scene with, that Tom Cruise is imagining that during that section. Tom Cruise never met that man. He saw her go into a room with Nicole Kidman, this handsome young man, go into a room with Nicole Kidman, and then leaving laughing. He's not allowed on set. Kubrick completely controls every aspect of that meeting.
So, I thought you meant in the movie at first. No. I'm like, no, it didn't happen. They never talked. Okay.
In the creation of it, he wanted to make Tom Cruise jealous. Again, I'm gonna get later into my theory about what this movie really is about.
You messed up, though.
But it's so messed up.
He
planned it. So he's like, he doesn't introduce him. He goes, okay, we're gonna go in here and shoot the sex scenes. Time out here, and he just it drove him nuts. I mean, it's not a coincidence they broke up right after this movie. It's not a coincidence. But yeah, this people made a big deal about the sex scenes in this movie, which again, there's they had to like put not robotic but like human bodies, naked bodies in front of sex scenes, so you didn't see as much as you're supposed to see in the original. That was one of the things to get an R rating, was that if you watch all the sex scenes at the orgy house, yes, there's an orgy house. There's naked bodies watching people having sex.
There's probably only like 6 actual scenes of nudity, and even then, it's almost clinical because it's like there's actually like an old woman scene, but they're all wearing masks, so it's just simulation. It's like
it's not what Cooper was not interested in that. He was interested in the outcome of that. Yeah. So as much as that was the one,
it's all a play almost, because there's really no proof that there's actually anything. I mean, it's we assume it's happening, but you could almost say, it's like watching, like when there's a sex scene in a movie, I don't assume that they're actually having sex unless I'm watching that Donald Sutherland one.
Oh
with
yeah,
the red jacket,
unbelievable.
and
But that was what the movie was
don't
sold
look
on, and
now.
it had a big opening week, and people were like, I don't know what, this is the movie where you see Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise have sex. No, it isn't. I don't know what you're talking about. But it's an unbelievably beautiful film, unbelievably shot. To me, the first thing I think of when I see this movie, I think of Nicole Kidman on the bed, pink dress on, glasses, and with a pen in her hand, just looking at him at the end of the film. And then all the mask work is gorgeous. These gorgeous, I don't know how much money they spent on masks in this film. They're all gorgeous porcelain masks. The lighting's unbelievable. The first scene where Tom Cruise walks in with the two models, I guess. Everything in this movie is beautifully shot. It's a Kubrick perfect film, and there's manipulation of actors just like there are in every other film. But what makes this movie different? I'm gonna get into my master theory that I have thought for over 20 years at this point. This is the first time Kubrick was told you need a star, because before this, Kubrick was the star. You look at Full Metal Jacket. Matthew Modine is the closest thing to the star. He was not a star. Jack Nicholson was not Jack Nicholson when he made Shining. That came out. He was not that person yet. Yes, Chinatown had come out. He'd been the star, but he was not a movie star yet. He was not the it thing. None of these movies besides Spartacus, again, which is not a Kubrick collection movie, is about the star. It's about Kubrick. And for him to be told at his age, after making 8 masterpieces, that you need a star, pissed him off. And again, there's no public knowing of this. This is just purely me. And every time I tell this theory to someone, they 100% buy it. I've never spoken to a single person this theory. They go, that makes sense. So he decides Nicole Kidman is the most beautiful woman in the world. I'm going to film her like I film women, and it's going to be gorgeous. And I'm going to make fun of Tom Cruise for 2.5 hours on screen, and he's never going to know it. Tom Cruise defended this film like a pit bull. No, you're not touching this. Like a pit bull.
For him.
If you watch this film, there is no one shorter than Tom Cruise in this film. Everyone's tall. Everyone, Lily Sobieski, the Chinese businessman that comes around the closet is tall. Those frat guys on the streets of New York who push him down and call him a faggot, they're all 6'6". They're all giants. The scene with Cummings where at the hotel where he's coming on to him and he has to use this thing. It's such a nod to the belief that Tom Cruise is gay. It's all these little things. Everyone's taller than him. He keeps showing his medical badge like he's a cop.
Oh my God, we kept talking about that out because I was telling you, Al watched it with me, and it got to a point where we just like, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor. I'm like, I'm just going to tell people I'm a doctor. Get in everywhere.
This is a fictitious New York City where everyone's a billionaire. The fact that you are a doctor that has $100,000 is garbage to everyone in this film. Everyone in this film is so much richer than you. Everyone looks down on you because you have an occupation. Like literally, but I'm a doc. He does this over and over again. They make so much fun of him. And the second, I think Nicole Kidman's monologue in the movie, but if you only knew, was the best scene in the movie. But Sidney Pollock's scene, which again was originally Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel had to quit the movie because he was on set for 18 months filming the scene as his rich friend, who's at the party. There's a scene where they show his mask, and it's supposed to be Harvey Keitel in the mask, and it becomes Sidney Pollock. At the end of the movie, Tom Cruise is so incredulous, like, how did you know I wasn't one of you? And Sidney Pollock, in a really you're a dumbass kind of way, says, you're the only one that came in a taxi.
Yeah, and everyone else had a limo.
Yeah, it was so
or like a driver car.
Yeah, every scene in this movie is meant to make Tom Cruise look dumb, short, and gay. And again, there's nothing wrong with being gay, but to Tom Cruise, there's a problem with being gay, obviously. So this movie, Stanley Kubrick was so mad that he could not make the movie he wanted to simply because I'm Stanley Kubrick. You understand this, right? That he destroys the idea, this iconic nature of Tom Cruise. He takes it down. Now the fact is, after this movie, again, Nicole Kidman went on to be the most awarded female actress of the last 25 years. She's become literally Katharine Hepburn-esque. She's that level of Oscar nominations, Emmy wins, everything. It's her. Like there's no one close to her. She's a giant of film. And this movie shoots her like she's the biggest movie star in the world. He adores her. Stanley Kubrick and her had this relationship, but they still do. She still talks about it. Tom Cruise after this movie makes maybe the best performance of his life because of this film. I believe that Magnolia is his greatest performance ever. And when he does not win the Oscar for it, he says, "I'm done. I'm gonna fly planes and shoot guns and jump off buildings. I'm gonna have the most. He's never cared about directors ever again. He does not. He's never. If I did not win it for Magnolia, I'm never gonna win it. If they think Michael Caine and God damn it, I just said it earlier. It's horrible. If they Cider House Rules, they think he's a better actor than me, I'm done. I'm done. Magnolia is one of the 10 best performances of the 90s. And as much as I dislike him, I've not seen one of his movies in the theater except for Top Gun 2. And this is a true story. When I went and saw Top Gun 2, I bought a ticket for a different movie. So I did not have to give Tom Cruise money. And I told this to the manager of the theater. He's like, all right. And I went in. I saw Top Gun 2. The first thing they do is Tom Cruise thanking me for saving cinema. And I wanted to leave that theater before I saw the movie, even though I didn't pay him money. I paid.
What movie did you buy a ticket?
I have no idea. It was just whatever. I literally, it was the first one alphabetical order. I paid for that. I have not given him a cent since. Oh God, what was it? The Last Samurai. That's the last movie of his that I paid to see. I have not paid to see another one since that. I had to see Top Gun 2 because I am a child of the 80s and it's required.
I still haven't seen it, but I didn't see Top Gun 1 until like this summer.
You're the best. This is why I love you. You've seen every Audrey Hepburn movie and you've seen silent films, but you haven't seen Top Gun 2, Top Gun 1 into the summer.
I haven't watched a lot because remember, like, okay, my parents are pretty strict about the movies, and the one time I tried to sneak a movie, which I didn't even try to sneak it. I just got to a friend's house and they were watching Howard the Duck, and I literally just forgot to call and make sure it was okay. So they just called to make sure I made it to the house. So I literally just walked in the door and was like, "Oh, a movie!" And like literally every other thought that I had to call my parents went out of my brain. And
I always assumed we met each other. I was 23 or 20, 21, something along that lines. When I first met her, I just assumed she was like from French Indochina because the way she talked. I thought she grew up like on a plantation in French Indochina, not knowing
I'm from Florida, but
8 weeks away from me.
Yeah, so I think. Well, no, that's not because I did watch Cocktail at a slumber party. Sorry, Mom, I did see Cocktail, but there just are things I never really watched. All the Dirty Dancing, never saw Top Gun, so and I also did like. I was like not as invested. Also, I did get to read Mad Magazine. So as I get a lot of times, if I haven't watched a movie, it's because I already read the Mad Magazine thing, and I'm like, well, I think this told it to me. So I guess I'm good.
There's this interesting thing that there is this generation of children who saw Kubrick movies from The Simpsons. That they're somehow now watching Clockwork Orange and realizing, oh, this is from something. This summer, as I do every summer, I work on a play with my county as part of my teaching thing. And this summer we did Peter Pan. And first day I said, can we dress the Lost Boys as people from Clockwork Orange? Can we have them all in the white with the suspenders and the hats? And they were, yeah, I really did.
Those people were important.
I would have been so happy. I really, and again, they couldn't do it exactly, but if you watch the video, some of the Lost Boys, there's a definite Clockwork Orange appeal to it. Like if I was a director, we'd be in so much trouble because it would have been like it all would have looked like Droogs. Because that movie his movies are visual masterpieces. There's a reason why The Simpsons and all these things and all these directors do these visual montages to his films because he is the master of visuals. If you watch Eyes Wide Shut, it is all about fluorescent light bulbs.
And okay, so I also noticed there's a specific body type for women that Kubrick uses because the nude women and Eyes Wide Shut could have been in Clockwork Orange.
Yeah,
it's almost the exact same.
No,
and also the use of the mannequins.
Yeah.
Like when he goes in the costumer shop and there's all these white mannequins, he's like, don't they look alive? And I'm going, no, but they look like they could have been at the milk bar.
You're a doctor, sir. How dare you? And again, Leo Sobieski, like they found the one girl who's 19 years old, who's 6'3". So when she's in the scene with Tom Cruise, she towered again. It's the chess playing. The fact that he made Tom Cruise jealous of this faceless man who had sex with his wife, his real life wife, and all these little things he did to Cruise to kind of belittle him in this way. But at the same time, he is a chess player and he is a photographer. You could pause any scene in Clockwork Orange and it's a painting. It's a Rembrandt. Every one of his movies. His movies are visual masterpieces while all being unbelievably manipulative. And this is why he's my favorite director, is because there's not a bad movie in the bunch. He does not have 1941 like Spielberg does. He does not have the last 10 years of his career like Hitchcock does. He doesn't. He doesn't have a couple movies like the Coen brothers have that are just like, I'll defend them because I love the Coen brothers. They're not good movies. There's not a single one. Mm-hmm.
Like what?
Intolerable Cruelty. I don't like. The Tom Hanks one. The Tom Hanks one is not good. Is Tom Hanks good at it? Sure. But there is, if you start at The Killing and go all the way through Eyes Wide Shut, there's not a movie among them that are not masterpieces. And I truly believe that he is the master manipulator. Every one of his movies, there's some disgruntled actor that'll talk about how he was mistreated on set, or he again, there's no reason to treat people like that. I'm not condoning those actions. I'll never condone a director mistreating someone. Lily Tomlin on the set of I Heart Huckabees, all that sort of stuff is stuff where I don't condone those actions. But what Kubrick did was make 10 masterpieces. And his career can never be touched. Christopher Nolan is about as close as you can get, but I don't see a lot of people that are going to be making Christopher Nolan movies in 20 years. But everything he does, again, there's not a director that doesn't talk about Kubrick. I just heard a interview with Bradley Gray where he talked about Kubrick, his control of the set, and how you control something, and how he used people as chess pieces. Were there some pawns? Yeah. Was Jack Nicholson a king on the set of Titanic? 100%. Everyone else has whole story shape, but Jack Nicholson's like best guy ever. You know, that he understood these weird. Again, but for him to take his last movie and just be so incredulous, like no, I'm Stanley Kubrick. I'm the star. Like I am the thing. And it's a weird coincidence that his last movie came out the same year as Terrence Malick's return after being gone for 26 years. These masters coming back to the fold. And again, Kubrick, his last film it's not my favorite, but it's right up there. It's probably the best performances. I will give you Nicole Kidman's performance in that movie against any performance by any actor in any of his films. He's not like the Coen brothers or Shakespeare, where when I think about Coen brothers films, I think of actors, I think of characters. I would kill to have a movie where the Big Lebowski meets Nicolas Cage from Raising Arizona. I would love to see those two talk. It's like Shakespeare, where you want to see Falstaff talk with, Henry V. Or they actually did talk to what I'm talking about. Falstaff talks to Hamlet. You want to see those moments. You want to see Macbeth talk to Othello. That's the beauty of Shakespeare. That's the beauty of the Coen brothers. They create these three-dimensional people. There are not a lot of three-dimensional people in Kubrick movies where you want to see them talk. But Nicole Kidman in Eyes Wide Shut is a masterpiece of a performance. And it started one of the greatest runs by a female actress in the history of the world. And it's not even close. You look at her from 99 to now, it's 7 Emmy nominations, 4 Oscar nominations, 2 wins. It's one of the greatest. She was Tom Cruise's wife before that film, from a couple okay movies. Again, To Die For is before that movie, which is great, but there's no telling you what Nicole Kidman came after this film.
Mm-hmm.
It's startling. And then he's so manipulative in a way that he knew that his adoration for the wife would piss off the husband. He knew it. He's great at. Again, he knew Spielberg was coming up. He knew Spielberg was the next Kubrick. Okay, Jaws and these films. He was not impressed. So what does he do? The one time he meets him, he craps all over him. That entire 70s crew wanted Kubrick's appreciation. He never gave it to them.
Well, I think Jaws is a great movie, so that's on.
Yeah, I think Kubrick probably likes it too. I think he likes kind of the sterile nature. I think he sees it as his. There are pieces of that movie that are very much 2001: A Space Odyssey. Mm-hmm. But again, Kubrick knew who he was. Kubrick was someone who knew that these cameras were needed for this movie, and he got them because he's a chess player in life. He is specific. He's exact. Is he the best father ever? Probably not. Was he the best friend ever? Probably not. But is he the best director ever lived? In my mind, absolutely. Okay, so we'll close that up now with, again, the thoughts of a man that was a control freak. And then we're going to move on next month to the control freak of holidays, Christmas. Yeah. And we're watching a couple Christmas classics, not any one specific director, actor, producer, anything like that, but a couple of movies we'll be looking at. The Original Miracle on 34th Street, my favorite holiday movie. We'll be looking at Home for the Holidays, Home Alone, And yeah, we'll have a conversation on is Die Hard a Christmas movie.
It is.
So I have to thank you. I would like to thank my amazing co-host for an amazing third episode, and we'll see you guys next month. All right, great job. All right, turn off. There we go. Yes, he's not a person that has friendships. I mean, very famously, Spielberg begged him to come to set when they were doing Indiana Jones in London. That's where Kubrick moved after the 70s. And
Wait, just hold on a second. My mom, sorry, I forgot to put on Do Not Disturb, and now everyone is like decided to text me right now. So
No problem.
let me